Hello everyone, welcome to my Cyberpunk 2077 review video. The review will have spoilers. If you're looking for a spoiler-free review, this is not it. So with that out of the way, let's jump right into it. I'm going to start with listing the pros and cons in that order, and then I'll give the game a final score on a scale from 1 to 10. So, pros. The game's story is good. You know, it's not like a great epic or anything, but it's a good story. I enjoyed it. There's really not much more to say besides that. Well, I guess I could mention a few of my favorite moments. For example, I liked the beginning where you go to heist Arasaka, and everything goes to shit, and so you're there with Jackie. T-Bug just died, and you're both just running, trying to survive. And in the end, you know, he dies. It's very sad. Now that was a very good scene, in my opinion. So, staying on the subject of characters, the characters, in my opinion, are very realistic. So you don't have characters that seem to just do whatever because the player wants them to. They have their own motivations. They get angry if you do something that they don't like, or if you disagree with something they said. The game itself is has the dystopian setting is very good as well. I mean, dystopias are, to be fair, dystopias are like already written. There's really not much room to innovate there. Particularly capitalist dystopias. But you know, it's a good setting. The game itself is very immersive, at least in my opinion. You know, I feel like I am playing, or rather, I don't feel like I'm playing V. I feel like I am V in a way. Occasionally, he does make some gonk-ass decisions. Not for those of you who haven't played, gonk means stupid. You know, it's occasionally that does happen, but overall, I think the devs did try to give us as many choices as possible. Well, it's at least in dialogue. I'll get to that in a bit. So you get the choice of 3 backstories that occasionally provide different voice lines or ways to complete missions. By voice lines, I mean, for example, if you're in a conversation, you can call upon your knowledge as a street kid or as a corpo, well, former corpo, or as a nomad to say something that is relevant to the scene, to the conversation. Sometimes you can complete missions in a completely different way, or just change the way that the mission goes. For example, as a corpo, there's a mission where you sneak into an Arasaka warehouse. As a corpo, you can just walk right in through the door. You see a guy who's corrupt, and you call upon your knowledge as a corpo to tell him, you know what, I'm here to inspect everything, that there better not be anything out of place. And then you just walk in, nobody shoots you. I did that in my corpo playthrough, and it was just fucking hilarious. So you got a lot of cool weapons and powers. Well, 2 out of 3 types of weapons. So you have tech weapons, smart weapons, and power weapons. Tech weapons can be charged and shoot through walls and obstacles. Smart weapons have bullets that curve to hit their targets. Power weapons can ricochet sometimes, Those are very basic. I prefer the first two. I mean, ricochet is the most basic thing you can do with bullets, and it's usually the first thing that developers do with bullets. Well, first one I guess would be bullet penetration over thin obstacles, through thin obstacles, but mostly they do have ricochet. At least in my experience. Maybe I've just been playing the wrong FPSs, or the right ones, depending on your perspective. So when I mentioned cool powers, I was specifically referring to hacking. So hacking, with hacking you can do basically anything. So there's a hack, for instance, that makes it so if enemies spot you, they become blind and deaf for a short period of time. So I've done that in my main save. You can just walk into a building, you know, you hack everybody with that I think it's a demon technically. So you install that demon and you walk right in through the front door and you just keep going until your objective, and then you turn around and you just do the same. Or actually you should probably get out through a window or something, because that only works once. So that's an example of a hack you can do. There's also like contagion, which, as the name indicates, is a sort of disease that spreads, deals damage over time. And you just have a bunch of hacks. So you also, of course, I could mention powers without mentioning cyberware, which is what the game calls the implants you can have. The first one, not optional, is the eye implant, Kudoshi Optics. It's said to be the best. You get the basic of the best. Usually these implants come with mods. The mods for optics are for like seeing grenades or whatever. Not grenades, sorry, the blast radius of grenades and stuff like that. You know, not amazing, but also not terrible. You also have implants for your arms, for your legs, for your hands, for your body. The body ones obviously are about health. The arms, you have the mantis blades, which I'm sure everybody likes. You have mantis blades are dual blades that come out of your forearms, which is fucking cool. You have the mono wire. I'm not sure what it does. Never tried it. Apparently it's some kind of whip. I'm not 100% sure on what it's supposed to do. You have what I thought was a rocket launcher. It's actually more of a grenade launcher. And to be honest, that one was a big letdown. I was looking forward to shooting rockets out of my forearms, but no. It's just a grenade launcher. Fancy grenade launcher. On the other hand, it could be a bug. So, you know, I don't know. At the moment, at the time that I'm recording this review at least, it shoots out grenades instead of rockets. And there's the gorilla arms, which are just, you know, strength upgrades. With those, you can actually open doors that require a certain amount of body, the stat. So it's like strength and HP. So with the gorilla arms, you can just open those doors by yourself without needing anything else. So there's a lot of variability in the builds you can make. Like even within the same stat, there's, let me see, 5 or is it 6 stats? I think it's 5 stats. Each stat has a bunch of different perks, usually in 2 or 3 categories, that you can then unlock. So there's a lot of variability, even if you build, say, something with high intelligence and strength. You can still get a lot of variability. So there's also a lot of cool cars and cool clothes. The clothes in particular are interesting because it's one of the few games where clothes, the cool clothes, are actually useful. Largely thanks to the mods that you can install on the clothing, but also because you you can upgrade stuff with the crafting system. Upgrading costs some amount of resources, and it increases the base stats of the thing you're upgrading. And it's very good. Well, it's very good if you have a lot of resources. Again, I'll get to that in a bit. But it is, I think it's cool that you can upgrade stuff. Most games don't really have that. And I liked it even if it could use some improvements, which I'll get to in a few seconds. So with the pros out of the way, I think I mentioned most of the pros in Cyberpunk 2077. We get to the cons. So first con, Jackie dies way too early. Like, personally, I bonded with the guy, I liked him right from the get-go. But I understand that for most people it was too short of an experience to really bond with him. Personally, I thought the character was great, so I would have liked to see more of him regardless, even if he were to die later on, I would have liked to see more of him. Now, I mentioned before the three backstories. So here's the thing. Each backstory gives you a prologue, which you play through. It's very immersive, shows you a day in the life of whatever backstory you picked. But afterward, the game kind of converges into a single thing. There's one side quest that is specific to one specific side quest per backstory. So street kids get one quest, the corpos get another, and the nomads get another. But other than that, and the occasional voice lines or the occasional ways to complete missions, I feel like the backstory system is underutilized and underdeveloped. Additionally, most quests don't really have alternative solutions. You have ways that you can reach the goal of the mission, but the goal will always remain the same. So, for instance, how do I put this? So you can sneak your way from A to B, but when you get to B, you're always going to be doing the same thing. Now, that is still some level of, completing the mission the way you want and doing what you want, but it's the most basic, and I expected a lot more from Cyberpunk 2077. Now, I also mentioned the crafting. So crafting is way too expensive if you're looking to, say, try what I did, which is to upgrade Johnny's equipment to legendary. So when I did the math, it would cost me more materials than I think I gathered in that entire playthrough, just to get his stuff to legendary. And although the devs did decrease the amount of materials required, it's still a shit ton of materials. Crafting itself just needs a complete overhaul. In particular, there is no way to multi-craft. So if I wanted to craft, say, 15 of something, I would need to hold down the button for, I think it's like a second or something for each one. So it would take me 15 seconds to craft something 15 times instead of just, selecting craft this 15 times and then pressing once. That's just basic crafting UI, in my opinion. Like this is the basic level of crafting. However, I'm giving I'm willing to give them some leeway here because of what we know happened, between the execs and the devs, and it was just a shit show overall. People got greedy, and this is what happens. Right, so there's an issue with interaction distance. I say interaction here, but it's between quotes. It's like the distance at which you can hack a target is not necessarily the distance at which you can see the target. Or the distance at which you can mark the target is not the distance at which you can see the target. This creates some issues. You can see here, I hacked into the security system. I went around, I marked a bunch of people, but then all my marks disappeared because they were too far away. So it's annoying. This is something that I think could be fixed. I'm hoping it can be fixed. So yeah, it's definitely one of the cons, or at least something that the devs could improve. Now, there are a few love interests, in my opinion. For those of you who don't know, I'm bisexual. So for me, I had playing as a male V, I had the choice between Carrie, who's 100 years old or something, and Panam, who's Panam. And obviously I went with Panam in every single playthrough. Carrie is just, I mean, I feel like he's more into Johnny than than V, and he's really only into it because of Johnny. At least that was my impression of him. And for the game to be immersive, I prefer to play as a male. So, but the women have what's his name? River and Judy. River is a detective. He's headstrong, but also a sensitive guy. He cares about people. And Judy is Judy. So Judy is just awesome, like Panam. Now, River is also awesome, and Carrie, well, Carrie is actually kind of annoying. But River is also awesome, but, Judy and Panam are really cream of the crop, in my opinion. So, moving on from the love interest, this isn't a dating simulator after all. There is an issue that I noticed regarding experience and eddies. Eddies, for those who haven't played the game, is the currency. Eddy is short for Eurodollar. I'm guessing so nobody gets offended. I actually thought that was kind of funny. Although that is actually probably from the tabletop RPG. Well, regardless. So in my first playthrough, I actually went and did every quest that can be done in the game, with the exception of NCPD stuff. And all through that, I was only able to get to level 43, I think, 40 something. Let's call it 40. Actually, let's call it 45, just to be generous. I know it wasn't 45, I'm pretty sure it was 43, but let's call it 45 just to be generous. And eddies, I mean, I had enough to buy the most expensive car in the game, and the most beautiful, in my opinion, the Aeon Dite. But, I was still short if I wanted to buy all the cars. There's a certain level of grinding that you need to do if you want to get to level 50 and buy everything, at least from my experience. I understand that some people don't think that they had to grind much. I'm not sure how they did it. I think they just kind of exploited the crafting system. But that was my experience, that you needed to grind quite a bit to get enough eddies and experience to max out everything. Now, as with any game, there are bugs. There are some particularly bad bugs in Cyberpunk 2077, but in the dev's defense, they are visual. Most bugs that I've experienced are visual. So you get like flicker, or you get a flickering fence, or some clothing that's clipping. No, sorry, some skin that's clipping through the clothing. But that's pretty much it. Oh, there are actually still two pros that I forgot to mention. So first up, the graphics. The graphics in Cyberpunk are amazing. Like, motion capture is there's a reason motion capture is being used more often nowadays, and the fact is that it is just amazing. Like, there are scenes where, you know, the characters raise their eyebrows while they're talking, and you can see the way that their forehead develops folds, you know, like most people get if they raise their eyebrows. I thought that was amazing. You could see, like, the skin is not perfect. It has some blemishes. You know, you have a mark here, a scar there. You have texture. You can really see, and well, I don't want to say feel, but you can really appreciate the level of detail that went into the characters and the cars. Like, if you drive in first person, you can see the dash. You have a bunch of dials for the speed and whatever. You know, it's very, very immersive, very realistic. The second pro that I forgot to mention is the fact that this runs very well even on a medium build like mine. So I have a GTX 1070 and what's it called, Ryzen 5 5600X. I think it's like 4.2 gigahertz. I'm not sure what the clock speed is. It's an hexa-core with 12 threads, and I'm pretty sure it's 4.2 gigahertz, or at least 4 gigahertz. Regardless, the system is whatever. Well, the GPU is whatever. But I used something called static something FX. It's upscaling, basically, with a little fancy algorithm. And at 75%, the game is buttery smooth. And you can't really tell that it's being rendered at 75% resolution, with the exception of when looking at a character like, say, Judy, and their hair moves up and down. Because there, what happens is, like, the pixels around the hair get kind of like dragged up with the hair, dragged up or down. So it kind of looks like they're melting a bit. So there you can definitely notice it. But other than that, it is extremely difficult to notice that that I'm playing at 75% resolution. I run with almost everything maxed. I disabled camera effects like motion blur, and I'm not sure if it has chromatic aberration, but if it does, I disabled it. And I think I put the crowd density on medium, or is it high? It's either medium or high, I think. Maybe low. You know what? I'm not sure. I don't want to say something that is wrong. So assume that it's low, just for the sake of argument, and it runs perfectly. You know, I get I think high 40s, low 50s in terms of frame rate, keeping in mind that I am recording when I play. Without recording, I can actually hit 60, which is the refresh rate on my monitor. And, you know, I think that's amazing that the devs managed to work their magic to make something like that. So, to summarize, pros: good story, cool weapons, powers, cars, clothes. The cool clothes are actually useful, and you can upgrade them if you want. You get 3 backstories that occasionally provide you ways to finish the different ways to finish missions. You got cool graphics that run well on low-end systems. You have it's a very immersive game apart from the visual bugs. The characters are well written, and you can have a ton of builds. So, cons: Jackie dies way too early. The game becomes too similar after the prologue. You don't really, like, all the missions together don't really give you enough eddies and experience for everything. Crafting needs a serious overhaul. There's also an issue, I think, with LOD or something, and I'm not sure what to call this, but the interaction distance thing that I mentioned. And last but not least, there are too few love interests. Overall, I would give Cyberpunk 2077 an 8 out of 10. Could very well rise to 9 out of 10 if all the bugs are fixed. And I would say 10 out of 10 if it had more variety in the way you approach quests and the issue with experience and eddies after you complete all the missions. So that is my review of Cyberpunk 2077. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you again next time.